Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our preview show, our first championship preview show of the year, and we're looking ahead to Armagh's clash against Antrim on Saturday in Corrigan Park at 12:30. I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen McDonnell and CJ McGourty, two men who know all about championship football. And Stevie, coming into the championship, the sun's shining, the weather's here, the ground's hardening up. This is the time you picked.
Yeah, sun doesn't normally shine in April, but it has been the last week or so. So hopefully it stays like that, and the ground is good and firm for the lads on Saturday afternoon, and we're going to put in a good performance. You know, once you see the sunshine out, you always get that sense of good feeling about championship football as well.
It's mad, CJ, isn't it, that it's so close to the league? Like, it just doesn't... We're nearly not ready for the championship. The league's only finished, but we're straight into championship football.
Yeah, I suppose it probably hurts the smaller counties as well, in terms of squad depth, where Armagh and Donegal probably have serious squad depth, and you know, possibly the likes of Antrim, Fermanagh, counties like that, even Derry, who carry a small pound, probably hurts them that wee bit, where you know, we're only a week or two after the league for most counties, and it also doesn't allow you an awful lot of time to work on things that didn't go so well in the league. So yeah, look, it's mad, but it's good that the championships are around so quickly, and you know, we're ready to rock this weekend.
And Corrigan Park, CJ, I suppose it's been all sorted now, so we don't have to spend too long on it, but the right decision was made eventually.
Yeah, eventually, like I suppose being from St Galls, Corrigan was never a nice place to go to, playing St John's, your local rivals, but I honestly think Armagh carried themselves brilliantly. I think the players kept themselves out of the media. I think Conleth did a wee piece there last week in the Irish News. I think Armagh were very, very smart. The right decision was made, but Armagh players just stayed away from it and have focused on the game, which I think is really important for them. Shows a mature group as well that they now have, and shows how far they've come. But yeah, the right decision, absolutely. You know, Antrim need to be playing at home, and you can talk about casement and whatever else, but Corrigan at the minute is the home ground, so that's where it should be played.
I think everybody in Armagh was in agreement with that from the start, Stephen.
Yeah, there was no disputing it at all. You might have a handful of fans that will argue against it, but I think Armagh carry a panel of 42, 43 players. Each and every one of them never had any issue going to Corrigan Park. The management team had no issue, and you know, as I say, the vast majority of supporters have absolutely no issue, and Antrim are the first team out, so they get their opportunity to play a home game. A sellout crowd taking the All-Ireland champions to Corrigan Park. Why would they not want it in Corrigan Park? You know, it's their opportunity to, you know, play one of the top teams in the country at home. So fair play to them. And as CJ says, you know, fair play to the Armagh players. They didn't come out and say anything about it, but you know, the whispers were that they wanted it in Corrigan Park all along anyway. So that was good.
In terms of fairness, it's the right decision has been made, CJ. How big of an advantage is it to Antrim, or how big of it in terms of, you know, giving themselves a fighting chance having it in home ground?
Yeah, Corrigan, for probably Armagh fans that don't know, it's very tight and it's very windy at times. It's very open. So I think it does give Antrim a little bit of an advantage. You know, I know Clanern played there a couple of years ago against Craigan, so you know the likes of Barry and Turbo and them boys would have played there. But I'm not so sure other Armagh players would have played there. I know they were down over the weekend, so that gives me a wee sense that they're worried a wee bit. But yeah, a tight field, you know, a big atmosphere. What else would you want as an Antrim player? Like, to give yourself a chance to try and peak against the All-Ireland champions. That's what you want to test yourself against. But I think it could be close for a while, yeah.
And Stevie, heading into the championship with the tag of the All-Ireland champions on their back, you were there in 03 against Monaghan. What's your memories from that game? I suppose did you take your eye off the ball? Was there a bit of complacency, or what are your memories?
No, I don't think there was complacency. We had a good enough league campaign that year, and we were in a good place going into the championship game. But we had a few key players that were missing that game. I think Geezer actually didn't play that game. Ronan Clark didn't play. John McEntee, no, maybe he did play, but Jimmer Marsden mightn't have played. We had 3 or 4 massive key figures in our team that didn't play that particular game, and that's not taken away from Monaghan's victory over us. It wasn't complacency, because we had good enough players coming in off the bench as well. Barry O'Hagan was another player who came in off the bench that day and started the game instead of one of the players who missed out. So we just come up against a hungrier team, a team that were, I think it was Paul Finley's championship debut. He kicked maybe 11 or 12 points that day. He's kicking them over for fun. And once you have that hunger and desire in any championship game, you're always giving your team an opportunity to create and cause an upset. And if Armagh go in with any complacency this weekend, particularly the fact that it is in Corrigan Park, Antrim, they are a attack-minded team. They'll definitely go for the pin of Armagh's collar.
I think that's the big thing, maybe, Stevie, from an Armagh point of view, is that they don't take their eye off the ball or anything, because, as you said, you're going into the Lions then here, and Armagh will be unbackable favourites. Everybody expects Armagh to win by 10 or 15 points, so that's an awkward enough position to be in too, heading into that game.
It is, yeah, but there's also a wee bit of pressure maybe on Antrim because of their stance over the Corrigan Park factor, but then they'll probably take a wee bit of heart from what Kildare done against Mayo a number of years ago and got the victory. So we can work one or two ways, but definitely Armagh's get into a tough place on Saturday afternoon. It's a tight venue, as CJ says. I think the capacity is maybe 4,500.
Yeah.
So that will create an unbelievable atmosphere, even though the numbers are a lot lower, but it'll create an intense atmosphere. And will the Armagh players be used to that in such a confined space? Who knows? But the Glenarn boys have been there, as CJ said, and they know the surroundings a wee bit, so hopefully they'll pass on their memories of playing there to the rest of the team.
And CJ, I suppose what is the mood in terms of Antrim, because they got relegated down to Division 4, which probably is a big blow to them going back down there, and now the All-Ireland champions coming to town. I suppose what's the feelings in Antrim at the minute?
Yeah, they're probably up against it, and they probably know that. Probably the whole country knows that come Saturday afternoon, but yeah, it seems to be just yo-yoing a little bit between Division 3, Division 4, and then we seem to be getting our act together a wee bit and then staying up for a year and coming back down. So there's a good few young players in that panel that'll not fear Armagh this weekend, and I think they will go out with confidence playing at home. But I think it's very important, if I was in the Antrim team or I was in the coaching team, I'd be playing with the wind in the first half. Just knowing Corrigan as it do, there is usually a brave breeze in it, and I'd be taking every advantage I could get to try and stay in the game as long as possible and create that little bit doubt in Armagh. With Michael Byrne there, who's a very good goalkeeper, and he's kicked a lot of two-pointer frees, so trying to get Barry Cassidy, maybe swing a few frees for us. So 2 pointers are massive, at this stage, and if Michael Byrne can kick 3 or 4 of them with the win in the first half, you could be going in fairly close. And we'll probably take hope, as Stevie said, what happened with Kildare that time, but also with Sligo yesterday pushing Mayo to 3 points. Sligo beat Antrim by a couple of points in the league. Armagh, I think, drew did it with Mayo.
Mayo,
yeah. So that's the strange thing about football. If you take them 3 or 4 matches and scenarios, there was only maybe 3 or 4 points either way. But Antrim need to take every advantage they can get from the start on Sunday or on Saturday. Sorry.
And Michael Byrne, he's probably one of the most underrated, just because maybe Division 3 games don't be on tally. People maybe don't know about him as much, but I've seen him a couple of times, and any Antrim match report I read, he seems to be one of the best players, and we'll touch on goalkeepers too when we come to Armagh. But in terms of Michael Byrne for Antrim, he's such a key player for them.
Yeah, he's a key player. Don't get me wrong, I haven't done my homework, but I would say he's maybe scoring maybe 30% or 40% of their scores from frees, and a lot of them have been 2-pointers, which is a benefit in one way, but it's also a negative, because if your goalkeeper's scoring 30 or 40%, you need to be looking at what the forward unit's doing or your forward style of play, and that's obviously in Division 3, where you're coming up against now an Armagh defence that probably won them the All-Ireland. Aaron McKay was great. I know he hasn't played much this year, but he was superb last year. Paddy Burns has been really good, and obviously Barry, was in for Player of the Year. So, Antrim at this stage are finding it hard to get big scores up, so frees could be key on Saturday.
In terms of goalkeepers, Stevie, Ethan Rafferty's fairly putting up the scores as well, and no Blaine Hughes, we'll argue he should have got an All-Star last year. He was certainly in All-Star form. It leaves Kieran McGeeney with a real headache, but probably given Ethan's scoring rate, that's what puts him in front of Blaine at the minute.
Ethan played, I think, all but one of the National League games, so he's probably ahead of Blaine at this stage, but without a doubt, Blaine, in my opinion, should have got an All-Star last year. He was the standout keeper in the Championship. But it's a great headache for a manager to be able to play a player who has the ability to go long range, kick points from distance, and have a backup keeper who should have won an All-Star last year. What a headache to have. But, it's going to be a tale of two goalkeepers. Michael Byrne, as you mentioned, I was looking at the scoring charts and he has consistently put up serious scores for a goalkeeper. Probably the highest scoring goalkeeper in the whole of Ireland.
Yeah, it wouldn't be off it, yeah.
So Ethan will have his work cut out I suppose, pip him for scoring on Saturday if Geezer are up for Ethan, which you would expect that will be the case. The thing with Ethan as well is he is a natural finisher. He's played a lot of football up front, he's played a lot of football around midfield, and he's got a presence about him as well. I think, in the last game against Derry, he caught one or two balls that were maybe just going over the crossbar, and having that size and the physique about him, it's an empowering thing to have, and it instills a lot of confidence in your defence in front of him. And I would imagine that Ethan will get the call, but it's no disrespect to Blaine, it's just the way the game has gone. The rules probably suit slightly towards a player like Ethan.
And the 2 pointers are going to be huge, not only on Saturday but throughout the entire championship. And Armagh have a few players that can kick them, the likes of Ethan. You have Oisin O'Neill there, now Grimley once he comes back in. So the 2 pointers are going to be huge. The further we go down the championship.
Yeah. Listen, Armagh have an abundance of attacking talent and all well capable of kicking points from distance. I'm delighted to see Oisin O'Neill back and getting a bit of football in the legs now, because he's quite a capable kick passer as well as kicking points from distance. We've seen the point that he scored, the invaluable point that he scored in the All-Ireland final last year. It probably would have been classed as a 2-pointer from the range that he scored. Rory Grugan's another player who can kick from distance. Now Grimley, fantastic long-range kicker. So, from an Armagh point of view, I don't think it's going to be all about the 2-pointers this weekend. I think they just have to try to keep the scoreboard ticking over as often as possible, and if the opportunity presents itself for the 2-pointer, then you've got enough players in the field capable of taking them. But I think their priority will be, listen, let's try to keep the scoreboard ticking over every couple of minutes, and if we can do that, then maybe the opportunities will open up a wee bit more often.
Oh, the 2 pointers, an avenue, Antrim will go down. CJ, do they have many players capable of?
Yeah, they've Dan McMakinhill there, who's a good young player coming through. The Paddy McBride there, that playing on his home patch, as well capable of kicking 2 pointers. I think they kicked 6 against Kildare in the first half. Now there was a serious breeze, but they'll take confidence from that. I'm sure it's something they'll have worked on. But as Stevie said, there's a fine balance probably about keeping the scoreboard ticking over. I think Derry kicked 11 yesterday, and they only converted 3. Where Donegal probably just get inside the scoring zone more and just kept chipping the 1 points over. So it's a fine balance. You don't want to be taking pot shots and just turning the ball over, and allowing Armagh out from kickouts easily without getting a score for it. But the Antrim do have a number of players that can kick 2 pointers, but I also think that we're trying to get inside that Armagh defence and getting a goal or two, because I can't see Antrim winning without scoring a couple of goals, to be honest with you.
Rory McCallan's probably going to be big. I think it was Kildare possibly his first game of the year. He'd missed a lot of football. But
yeah, that's the big thing about Rory McCallan. He's a big player for Antrim. He's big and physical at the edge of the square. If he kicked 2 pointers and the drop short with the wind in Corrigan, he's there. He scored a lot of goals last year, but the problem is he's been injury prone. He's been very unlucky over the last 2 years. So how match fit is he? I'm not so sure, because very hard coming in the championship game, no matter who you are, with one game played under your belt, and then you're going in against a sort of a Barry McCambridge or a Paddy Burns who's played 7 or 8 at probably a higher level, and then asking them to go and try and produce for you. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'd imagine it'd probably be McCambridge, given the size of him too.
Physically, McCambridge is the one that matches up to him. And I suppose when we're talking about injuries and stuff, Steve had mentioned Oisin O'Neill. He come back in. He had missed the start of the league. You've maybe Ben Creeley now, Grimley, Aaron McKay, Tiernan Kelly. There's a few boys that are guaranteed starters nearly that are missing at the minute. Well, we don't know what their fitness is like for Saturday, but they missed a couple of last rounds.
Joe McElroy as well.
Joe McElroy.
He's at as well, So, Armagh, they done, when you look at their league campaign, they done really, really well to survive Division 1, given the calibre of players that they were missing throughout it. And credit to the young players that come in, they really stepped up. Young McCormick had a fantastic league campaign, and given the form that he's been in, I'd say it very difficult for Geezer to drop him at this stage. And a few players did step up to the mark. I say Oisin O'Neill came back into the squad, or into the team in the last couple of games. I thought in the first half against Dublin in particular, he was really, really impressive. Ross McQuillan has grabbed an opportunity now, given the fact that those boys are out injured, and he had a really good league campaign. You know, you look at Armagh's main players in the league campaign, the better performers, and you'd have to say that Tomas McCormick and Ross McQuillan are up there.
And that's the likes of McCormick, Darren McMullen, Gareth Murphy from your own club, like all getting game time, and McMullen and McCormick, they've got a starting jersey and they've held on to it throughout the league.
Yeah, and McMullen is a player I did mention there, and you know, probably more so because he did get in last year in the league final, but played wing half back, and that was a position where I thought he felt a wee bit lost in that particular game. He's a half forward, that's his natural position. He can play on the wing, but he's probably more comfortable at 11. He plays a lot of his football for Madden there. Dangerous player as well, has found his way to find scores from most games as well, and so is McCormick. And you know, having these players that have come into the team and not afraid to take their opportunities is brilliant. Gareth Murphy, you mentioned him, whether or not he sees game time this weekend, not too sure, but I don't think there's too many players that have come into the Armagh setup in recent times anyway and progressed as fast as what Gareth Murphy has done in terms of getting himself in and getting some game time in the National League. I think he's only joined up at the squad there maybe 6 months now, and he's already getting game time. So you know, it just shows how well thought of he is. He is a fantastic footballer. You know, we know how good he is in Clevie, and you know, I know by having conversations with the likes of Kieran McKeever, who would be the defensive coach, you know, he would rate him highly as well.
I suppose, CJ, we're aiming off players that aren't going to be there, and players that are coming in. Like Armagh's strength and depth is huge.
You could lend us a few for the weekend. I tell you, yeah, it's scary. Like, you know, Stevie was rhyming off 3 or 4 there, and then, you know, I was thinking of Darren McMullen myself. Yeah. You know, and it's unbelievable, and that's why, you know, I was chatting to his offer about. I think if every county got a couple of players injured, Armagh and Donegal could probably be the two that you're looking at, because the strength and depth is incredible that they have, and I think they're actually matching like for like. When they take one off, they're putting someone on at the same sort of standard, if not better. You know, and I think they've actually got a stronger squad than they did last year. You know, because the younger boys have got more game time and are used to that now. So springing them off the bench or starting them is going to be easier for them now that they've got 6 or 7 good league games under the belt at a very good standard. So, you know, going to Armagh training every night, you must be fighting for your position big time, and that's only a good way to be if you're a county team and you're pushing for back-to-back All-Irelands, and I think Armagh will not be far away.
And this game, CJ, it's at 12:30 on Saturday, which is a strange time for a championship game, and it could leave the players, you know, I don't know what their eating routine and all is, but maybe eating pasta at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Like, I couldn't believe it was at 12:30. I thought it was a misprint, to be quite honest with you. But just even the logistics of it, you know, boys obviously coming from Cross, Clevie, down that, like, you know, that's a good hour from Belfast, like, you know, and obviously we'll have a couple of roadblocks in place to make sure that there's another few delays in there.
No doubt
but yeah, it's a strange one, and that can upset players, no matter if you're playing at home or away. Just trying to get up early in the morning, getting food in the, you know, usually have that wee bit of relaxing time before sort of. Traditionally, they used to be, probably back in Stevie's day, 20 or 30 years ago, they used to be 3:30 throw-ins, and then they sort of changed to 2 and 4 o'clock. But like 12:30's really, it's even early for a minor game. Yeah. You know, in the old days, there wouldn't have been a minor game before 12:30. So that, hopefully that does upset Armagh, to be quite honest with you. But I just find it strange, like, yeah.
What do you make of it, Steve? Because I know it's for the ladies' game. It's for anybody that wants to go to the ladies' Division 1 league final at 5 o'clock in Croke Park. You'd probably still find it tight to get down there.
Absolutely.
But that's the reason for it.
12:30 is not a good time. And by the way, CJ did play in the 2 and 4. As a player, I always preferred the 2 p.m. game. I hated the later one as well, because the day is too long, and you know, 2 o'clock is just about the right time. But 12:30, it's a wee bit bizarre, but I'm sure, given the homework that the Armagh team and the backroom team and all would have done, and the preparation that they go through, I'm sure they were down at Corrigan Park the weekend past, and their training session would have been based around the warm-up at the time that it's going to happen this weekend, and maybe playing a bit of a match in Corrigan Park at 12:30 and throw in at 12:30. So their preparation would have been done over the weekend, just to gear the players towards, right, this is exactly what's going to happen this time next week, so plant that seed into your head, and that's how it works. That's what we often done in the past, and I'm sure, you know, the level of work and preparation that the boys go into, and the detail of all of that there, that'll all be worked out. And you know, you mentioned the pre-match meal and all. them players will be working on that all week. So they will, it just doesn't. You don't turn up on Saturday and expect to have a meal maybe at 9 or half 9 in the morning and be ready to go. Them players will be making sure that their body is right and used to that all week.
You'd mentioned CJ about Armagh getting into Corrigan. I'm not sure Antrim would get in here if the game was in here. So
no, look, it's only right as well. Like it's we're on about Antrim getting fairness. It's only fair that Armagh players get in and see what they're going to be dealing with in terms of chain room or pitch or what way the wind's blowing and stuff like that. So it's great that Antrim sort of liaise with the Armagh County Board, and as Stevie says, like, it just shows probably that Armagh aren't taking Antrim lightly. They're doing everything professionally to make sure that they get the performance, and that's the level where Armagh are at and have been for a number of years. They're just geared towards getting the performance, improving things in the league, and then probably using it as a stepping stone probably to go further in Ulster.
And Stevie, in terms of the Ulster Championship, obviously such heartbreaking losses the last 2 years in the Ulster finals, and going on to win All Ireland was obviously huge last year. But I suppose what is Ulster? It still means something.
Absolutely.
The Provincial still means something up here, and certainly for Armagh.
I think when we won our first Ulster title, we went 17 years. Yeah. There was a gap between 82 and 99, 17 years. It's now 17 years again. And you wouldn't, it's hard to believe that it's 17 years, given the, I suppose, dominance period that we had for a decade in terms of going and winning Ulsters. But it would be massive for them players, and hopefully the belief and confidence of winning All Ireland last year will drive them towards an Ulster title. I know all them players madly want an Ulster medal, and they deserve one, but you only deserve one when you go out and put in performances. And the last couple of years they've been extremely unlucky with 2 penalty shootouts in the 2 finals, and they're not a million miles away. They are up there in the top 3-4 teams. The strength of their squad, the depth of it, and there's no over reliance on any particular player. The CJ says they have a player coming in off the bench equally as good, if not stronger, than the player who's starting, and that's massive. You would say that Armagh and Donegal have the best squads probably in Ireland. Yeah. Even Kerry have a brilliant starting 15, but have they got the depth in their squad? I don't think that they do. Dublin as well, they don't have the depth that they once had. So I would be saying that Armagh and Donegal have the best squad depth in the province, but they're not going to be complacent going in against Antrim. And then if they do manage to get over that, they're going to be facing Tyrone or Cavan, and that's another difficult day as well. So they've got a wee bit to go before even talking about Ulsters, but they'll take it step by step, and that's I suppose when you do win an All Ireland, you get more confident and less complacent. And Armagh have had heartaches in Ulster in the last couple of years. They'll definitely not be going in with any predetermination that they're going to be beating Antrim this weekend. They'll just have to go in knowing that they have to go in with a professional attitude, get the job done, and come out of Corrigan Park with a result. It's
probably a strange one, Stevie, in that Armagh won the Ireland last year, but they're coming back this year maybe even hungrier because they want an Ulster. Like you can see the last couple of years what Ulster means to Armagh fans, the team. Like it means an awful lot.
Ulster's a massive thing. It's the best footballing county or province in the country, so it is. It's the most competitive provincial title to play for, and why wouldn't them players want an Ulster medal? Every single Ulster medal that we ever won, they were hard earned, and when you know that you've earned it the hard way, then you fully deserve to get it. And those players haven't been too far off. They got a glimpse of what Ulster final day is all about and what it's like, and it's a special occasion. I think CJ, you might have played in a couple of Ulster finals.
I was away in America that year.
Yeah, so it's a brilliant occasion. The atmosphere around Clonus, and those boys that want to get back there and experience that all over again, and hopefully make amends for the last couple of seasons, because the heartbreak of losing an Ulster final in penalties is difficult to get over. But I think last year, looking at their level of performances after the Ulster final, I think they quite swiftly forgot about what went on and how they lost that game.
I suppose the big thing, CJ, for Antrim this week is we've talked about maybe the keeper Michael Byrne. We talked about Rory McCann. Like, I suppose the big question mark is how can Antrim hurt Armagh? That's going to be possibly the 2 pointers we discussed as well. So that's the big thing heading in here is where's Armagh's weak spot really that Antrim can maybe hope to exploit.
I'm not so sure, and that's me just being brutally honest. Armagh are a real good outfit. Antrim, yes, carrying the ball at them possibly. I think that's where Armagh have improved though. 3 or 4 years ago, they gave a huge amount of frees away. I think they've really sorted out their tackling in the last 2 years. So it's one area that maybe Antrim could go back to see can they run at them. But again, Armagh are so physically strong in the tackle that you don't want to be, running in the traps. And the ball's turned over, and Armagh are so good in transition with Oisin Connolly and the pace and the power that they have. So Antrim need to be careful. I think possibly throwing the ball in, to Big Rui McCann and trying to get a couple of flick-ons, and that's probably why I would be, with Stevie in terms of playing Ethan Rafferty, just with his height in there against Rui McCann, high balls coming in. Now Blaine obviously, he's an unbelievable keeper. He saved the penalty out there one night against me. So
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. It was a good, really good penalty to be honest with you. Yeah. But no, Blaine's an outstanding keeper. But just I think Ethan with that size, that one way, I'm sure Geezers sort of have looked at Rui McCann and identified him. So it's really hard to break down a team like Armagh, and the Kerrys, the Mayos have found it difficult. So I think it's going to be a real uphill struggle for Antrim, and I think Armagh will have the bit between the teeth. I think they won in Ulster. I honestly think 3 or 4 Armagh players might have walked away this year.
Yeah,
I honestly do, but I think it's the Ulster that's hurting them. It would have been nice to go off and with an All-Ireland and just retire, but I think they're back for an Ulster, and I think they wouldn't want that burden of, you won an All-Ireland but you didn't win an Ulster. And I think that's, I think that will really give Armagh focus going into this weekend, saying, no banana skins, let's get this job done professionally, let's get down the road and let's start to prepare for the next round. So, unfortunately, I can only see an Armagh victory this weekend.
I think that penalty miss you're talking about, you should have beat Armagh that night, or could have beat Armagh that night.
Yeah, I think it was actually in around level, to be honest with you, and I missed a penalty, Blaine made a great save, and then Armagh kicked on, but I think Armagh were Division 3 at that stage.
Division 3,
and that just shows you where they've went since then. A lot of work's been obviously done at club level. You look at Clonerne, the amount of players that have come through from Clonerne. You look at the Crosses, the Cleavies, the big clubs are producing the good players. And as I say, there's 40, 42, 43 that you could pick from.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that every one of the 43 would be starting for Antrim this weekend. And that's the beauty of where Armagh are at, and they have to take a lot of credit for that. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting on an Armagh podcast here or whatever, but I just think the work they've done is exceptional in the last number of years, and they're reaping the rewards of it right now. But as I say, in sport there's a short window to be really, really successful, and I think Armagh have a short window now to win Ulster again. I don't think Tyrone are as strong as they once were. Derry have faded away a wee bit over the last 18 months. Donegal are obviously real strong. So I think Armagh are in with a great shout, not only of winning the All-Ireland but winning Ulster, and I think they need to take advantage of that sooner rather than later.
And Stevie, I suppose that's what we're talking about. I think that was 2017 maybe, was it? Like, Armagh have made massive strides in less than 10 years. They were talking about playing Division 3 football, and now we're up talking about hopefully going for 2 in a row.
Yeah, and in around that period Armagh were probably a yo-yo team. They're up and down, maybe Division 2, Division 3, and then maybe a season in Division 1 and then back down. And that's why it was very important that they maintained their status of Division 1 football this year and get into next year for them younger players as well, as much as anything else. And the longer you stay in that division, I suppose, the smarter you get, because you're coming up against better quality opposition all the time, and you're learning, you're constantly learning. In terms of the Ulster campaign and the drive from the players, you look at the All-Ireland winning squad from last year, not one retirement, and that tells me exactly what you said, CJ. They all want an Ulster medal. They all want to come back and prove a point, not only an Ulster medal, but they're good enough to kick on and compete for the All-Ireland series as well. So they all want to experience that once again, but definitely a burning ambition within that squad has got to be an Ulster title as well. And what's to say that they're not going to get there? If they turn up and put in the performances that we seen in the first half against Tyrone, the first half against Dublin, I would say probably in terms of the overall league campaigns, they're probably the 2 most complete 35 minutes by any team in the league campaign across the board. So if they can produce that type of football, then it'll be very hard to stop.
I think it's also important, like Geezer must take a lot of credit for that, the culture within the group, obviously I'm looking from the outside, but not one retirement speaks volumes, that they're all buying into it, they're all enjoying it. He's obviously setting the culture out, but he also must take praise for you know, obviously the first number of years probably didn't go the way they liked it. The Armagh board stuck with him, which, you know, we see a lot of people moving people on, which is not always the right idea. But he went and got Kieran Donaghy, he's got Kieran McKeever, who's a great coach. He's got Conor Gilligan in, which is obviously a great coach, and that's obviously there's more people in the background, but it seems to be an unbelievable setup. And Geezer must take a lot of credit for that, and probably the Armagh board too for, you know, sticking with him when they were probably yo-yoing, because they were seeing the bigger picture. And I don't think that's where a lot of counties do. They sort of see a 1 year process and then say, right, well, that wasn't good enough, away you go.
Yeah.
And I think Armagh need to take a lot of credit for that as well as Geezer.
And Stevie, the things expand the whole time. And I know we have our Win with Armagh poster here behind us. Like, the work going on in Portadown at the minute is so important for not only now but for future generations.
The development of Armagh football, the future of it, and, you know, the next generation. And, you know, what was really pleasing last year from my point of view, from a parent's point of view, with Armagh winning, was that our kids got to experience that, and now our kids have their own heroes within this county. So hopefully in 5, 6, 7, 8 years time, we'll see a new generation of footballers, and they'll have their own base in Portadown. They'll go and kick on and represent Armagh at all levels, and you know, have the drive and ambition that these boys have set now. You know, they are one of the benchmark teams in the country. They have set a good example across the board, you know, and having a base is very important and critical for Armagh, for the future development of Armagh. What those boys went and achieved last year definitely has inspired a county, and definitely will inspire the next generation of footballers coming through.
And CJ, just before we wrap up, we always finish our podcast with a prediction. So, do you see an upset coming here, or what do you see happening?
No, I'd love an upset to happen. I think we need an upset this summer again. I don't know which province it's going to come from, but hopefully it'll come on Saturday. But look, I've always been straight down the line. I just can't see it coming. I think Division 3 football to Division 1 football, in terms of fitness, athleticism, you know, skill set, I don't see many weaknesses in Armagh at the minute. You know, as I say, if I'm Antrim, I take every advantage I get, see where I'm at half time, and then sort of reassess. But not only that, like, you know, even if you are close coming down the stretch, the bench that Armagh have already alluded to, the strength, like, I don't think Antrim have the same impact off the bench. If the weather is sort of warm like that, you know, a Division 3 team normally tires because they've been playing at that standard for the last couple of months, where Armagh have been playing at a high pace. But look, as I say, football's a strange thing sometimes. You only have to look at Sligo Mayo the weekend, and if I was an Antrim manager this weekend, I'd be saying, look at that match there. You know, Mayo drew with Armagh, as I've already said, and Sligo were close enough to us. So let's go into it with confidence. And that's the one thing probably that Antrim struggle with is, you know, mentality. You know, it doesn't matter who you're playing or where you're playing them. You have to go in thinking that we can win this match. And I'm not so sure over the years Antrim have been able to do that. And that's one big negative that they've had over the years. But do I see an upset happening? No, I don't. I'm hoping it'll be close so Antrim can build for the Tailteann Cup, because at the end of the day, seeing the bigger picture that I talked about, Antrim need another run in the Tailteann Cup to bring a number of them young players on. And if they get a hammer at the weekend, it could set them back. But I'm hoping, you know, 5 or 6 points, but I can't see Armagh pulling away real comfortable, and, you know, they could win by as many as 14 or 15 if they really wanted.
Stevie, what do you think? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, well, Andy McEntee's going to have his Antrim team well pumped up for the game. They're going to be well psyched, given the fact that it is in Corrigan Park as well. That is a real good motivating factor for them. But Armagh are just too good. They're far superior than Antrim, so they are at the minute. Antrim, on the back of a relegation back to Division 4 as well, against a top tier Division 1 team, and All-Ireland champions with that there too. Armagh's not going to go into this game with any complacency. They'll go in with a professional attitude, and they'll get the job done. I think it's going to be extremely tight in the first half, but the bench, once again, with Armagh will make a big difference. I can see this being 10 points plus for Armagh victory, and that's not being arrogant or anything. I just think there's a huge gap in comparison to the two teams at the minute, and Armagh at the top tier, as where Antrim have been demoted to lower division. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for that too.
Great stuff, man. Well, that's all we have for our preview show. We'll be back, of course, at the weekend. We'll have our review show and hopefully have a few interviews from the game as well. So thanks to the two men for coming on and giving us their thoughts. Stevie McDonnell and CJ McGourty. Thanks to Sean on camera for sorting everything, and thanks to our sponsors as well for helping us produce this podcast. Everybody will be back on Sunday evening probably, and we'll maybe have our club roundup show as well as Armagh's game against Antrim. So thanks everybody for tuning in.